Imagine for a moment that you have reached the very end of your journey, lying quietly on your deathbed as the final hours tick away, and standing in the shadows around you are the ghosts of your unfulfilled potential. These are the ghosts of the brilliant ideas you never acted upon, the unique talents you let wither away in the dark, and the risks you were simply too afraid to take. They are standing around your bed looking down at you with angry, deeply disappointed eyes. And they whisper a heartbreaking truth into the silence of the room. We came to you because you were the only one who could have brought us to life. And now, because of your hesitation, we must go to the grave together. I want you to sit with that heavy image for a second. Let it sink into the very marrow of your bones, because the most terrifying thing in this world is not failure, and it is certainly not poverty, and it is not the sting of rejection. The absolute most terrifying thing is arriving at the end of your time here on earth and realizing you never truly lived the life you were capable of living. You hold a brush in your hand every single morning, staring at the blank canvas of a new day. And that brush represents the choices you make. Yet so many of us drift aimlessly through our days, our weeks, and our years, carrying the exact same heavy thoughts, the exact same destructive habits, and the exact same tired excuses that have kept us chained to a life we don't even like. We sit around waiting for the perfect moment. We tell ourselves the comforting lie that tomorrow will be different, that next week we will start taking our health seriously, that next month we will finally save money and become the person we were meant to be. But let me tell you a quiet, devastating truth that you already know deep down. Tomorrow seamlessly becomes next week. Next week bleeds into next month, and next month simply never comes. You are living your life as if your time is infinite, acting as though you have an endless supply of tomorrow stored up in a vault somewhere just waiting for you. It is completely absurd when you think about it. You panic when your phone battery drops to 10%, frantically hunting for a charger with deep anxiety. Yet, when your own life energy is completely drained, when your dreams are quietly slipping away into nothingness, you simply shrug and say you will fix it all next year. We treat the artificial deadlines for our jobs like absolute prison sentences. But the deadlines for our own lives, our own happiness, are treated as entirely negotiable. You do not need more motivation, because motivation is a fleeting, unpredictable emotion that will abandon you the moment things get difficult. Relying on motivation to change your life is like waiting for a gentle breeze to push a massive ship across the ocean. It might show up for a moment, but it will leave you hopelessly stranded just as quickly. What you actually need, what your tired soul is begging for, are new rules. You need to draw a violent line in the sand and decide that the era of negotiating with your own potential is permanently over. Your life will not get better by chance. It will only respond to your personal philosophy, to the concrete, non-negotiable set of ideas you consciously decide to adopt and live by from this day forward. 6 months. That is all it actually takes to completely change the trajectory of your existence. Not decades, not a lifetime, but just 6 months of intense discipline, focused effort, and unwavering commitment. Most people will carelessly waste the next 6 months without even realizing it, drifting from one distraction to another, letting their focus be stolen by a screen. But if you truly lock in, if you eliminate the excuses that have held you back and execute at the highest level, you will look in the mirror half a year from now and barely recognize the person staring back at you. You must ask yourself 4 profound questions right now. Why pay the price and work this hard? Why not see how far you can go and what you can become? Why not you with all your unique capability? And finally, why not now? There has never been a better time to breathe life into your dreams before they die. Today, we are going to break your old patterns wide open, burn away the comforting lies that were never worth keeping, and lay down the foundational rules for a life that actually matters. The first rule you must carve into your mind and practice until it hurts is the law of absolute, undeniable ownership over your own existence. It is incredibly tempting to point your finger at the outside world when your life feels stuck. You can blame the shifting economy. You can blame your government. You can blame the neighborhood you grew up in or the specific hand of cards you were dealt at birth. You can look at the billionaires and say you simply didn't win the Ovarian lottery, that you weren't born into the right family with the right skin color or the perfect environment. Warren Buffett admits he won this lottery by being born in America in 1930 with a brain wired for capitalism, acknowledging that if he had been born in the 1200s, his talent for allocating capital would have just made him some animal's lunch. But the brutal, uncomfortable truth that nobody likes to talk about is that luck is merely the starting line. It is absolutely not the finish line. You will see people who were handed every conceivable advantage in the world, born with immense wealth and natural beauty, who die completely miserable because they wasted every single gift they were given. And you will see people who were dealt a terrible, heartbreaking hand, born into crushing poverty and facing relentless discrimination, who slowly built lives of immense power and profound meaning. The difference between them was not their IQ, and it was not some magical talent. The difference was that they completely stopped playing the victim and started taking full, terrifying responsibility for their outcomes. When you sit around blaming someone or something else for your current situation, you were literally handing over the keys to your life, giving an outside force the ultimate power to dictate your future. But the exact moment you look yourself in the mirror and declare that your life is up to you, you violently snatch that power back. You have to understand that your brain is the most powerful weapon in the world. But if you do not actively control it, it will completely control you. Your mind is constantly talking to you in the silence of the day, whispering heavy doubts, desperately searching for a place to rest, begging you to stay in the warm, comfortable bed. When the alarm goes off in the dark, the human mind deeply loves comfort, treating it like a cozy, familiar blanket. When in reality, comfort is a slow-moving zombie that quietly eats away at your life while you casually binge-watch another TV series. You have to stop waiting to feel like doing the hard work. The people who actually win in this life, the ones who leave a legacy behind, do not wake up and ask themselves if they feel like getting out of bed. They just decide that this is simply who they are and what they do. They realize that discipline is not a punishment, but rather the ultimate freedom. It is the freedom to finally live the life you actually want. Rather than being hopelessly enslaved by your fleeting emotions and bad habits, look at the story of Edwin C. Barnes, a man who had absolutely no money, no connections, and no formal education, but who made a non-negotiable decision that he was going to work not for, but with Thomas Edison. He did not sit around asking if success was possible. He simply decided it was inevitable, took a train to Edison's office, accepted menial jobs, sweeping floors for years, and waited patiently for his moment to strike. He didn't wait for the perfect conditions. He forced them into existence through sheer will. Or look at David Goggins, who at one point weighed nearly 300 pounds, working for a pest control company, spraying for cockroaches, making $1,000 a month, and terrified that this miserable existence was his absolute 100% potential. He had to immerse himself in suffering, duct taping his broken feet to run on stress fractures and military training, deciding that being broken and in pain was simply his new normal. You have to become the CEO of your own suffering, realizing that the quiet discipline to keep a promise to yourself is the only thing that builds genuine self-confidence. Every single time you say you're going to do something, whether it is reading 10 pages, doing 10 push-ups, or working on your business, and you actually follow through, you're watering a tiny seed of self-belief. Slowly, quietly, you stop needing external motivation videos to pump you up because you have finally learned to trust your own word, but taking absolute ownership is only the beginning of your transformation. The second rule requires you to do something that will cause your ego to scream in pure agony. You must learn the brutal, beautiful art of subtraction. We live in a society that loudly glorifies busyness, where constant exhaustion is worn like a badge of honor and being overwhelmed is treated as a twisted status symbol. People will proudly declare how busy they are running in 10 different directions, but busyness is simply the anesthesia of the mediocre. It is a drug you take to avoid the hard, terrifying work of making a real choice about what matters. We are drowning in the false assumption that to get more out of life, we have to put more into it. But adding more to a chaotic life only breeds more chaos. Warren Buffett once did a simple, revealing exercise with his private pilot, Mike Flint, that perfectly illustrates the deadly danger of wanting too much. He told the man to take a piece of paper and write down the top 25 things he wanted to achieve in his lifetime, or a massive list filled with career aspirations, family goals, and personal dreams. Then he asked the pilot to look hard at the paper and circle only the top 5, the absolute non-negotiable priorities. The pilot sweated over it, struggling to choose, but eventually he circled 5 things, leaving 20 items uncircled. When Buffett asked him what he would do with the remaining 20, the pilot confidently smiled and said he would focus primarily on the top 5, but chip away at the other 20 whenever he had a free weekend, treating them as secondary priorities. Buffett looked him dead in the eye and delivered a piece of advice that alters destinies. He told the pilot that the 20 uncircled items were absolutely not his secondary priorities. They were his enemies. They were the avoid at all costs list. Toxic waste that should not receive a single second of attention or a single ounce of energy until the top 5 were entirely achieved. The deep truth about human psychology is that you're already smart enough to avoid terrible ideas. You already know that gambling your life savings is a mistake. The real danger, the silent killer of your potential, lies in the good ideas, the project that seems kind of interesting, the comfortable relationship that is just okay, the business opportunity that is merely promising. These good ideas are incredibly seductive because they are just good enough to justify spending your precious time on them, but they will never, ever give you the massive compound returns of a truly great idea. You have a finite, limited amount of cognitive bandwidth and physical energy every single day. And if you spread that energy across 25 different things, you will move all of them forward by a mere inch in the game of life. The person who moves an inch is completely invisible. But if you gather all of that scattered energy and focus it like a magnifying glass, harnessing the raw power of the sun onto just one tiny dot, you will start a massive fire. Pruning your life is deeply painful because your ego desperately wants to be everything to everyone, terrified of missing out on the party, the trend, or the opportunity. You must learn to look at a perfectly decent project, take it behind the barn, and shoot it. Not because it is bad, but because it is not the absolute best. A master gardener does not cut a branch off a tree because he hates the branch. He cuts it because he loves the tree, knowing that if it tries to grow in 20 different directions at once, it will become weak and collapse under its own weight. You are the tree. You must cut away the good to make room for the great and never look back. You have to apply this brutal pruning to everything, the people you spend your time with, the digital media you consume, the random thoughts you entertain. You have to put blinders on to protect your focus. Are you surrounded by the books, the podcasts, and the driven people that actually help you grow? Or are you letting your environment drag you down into mediocrity? Distraction is the absolute ruin of ambition. In a world full of wasted hours and endless scrolling where every application and advertisement is violently fighting to steal your attention, the ability to focus on one thing at a time is a rare superpower. Stop people-pleasing. When you nod along and say yes to 100 tiny favors for everyone else just to keep the peace, you slowly and quietly squeeze your own dreams entirely out of your schedule. The people you're trying so desperately to please are busy living their own lives. Binge watching Netflix and completely unaware of the massive sacrifices you're making just to avoid their judgment. Saying no is a protective shield for your mental peace, your energy, and your future. When you finally stop saying yes to the trivial demands of the world, you unlock an insane amount of energy for what truly matters. Start using the minimalist 90% rule in your life. If an opportunity, a purchase, or an invitation is not a 90 out of 100, if it is not a resounding heck yes, then it must be an immediate no by ruthlessly clearing your calendar of the things that score a mere 60 or 70%. You create the quiet, sacred space needed to actually build your empire. Once you have taken ownership and violently cleared the chaotic distractions from your path, you will inevitably step out into the arena and face the one thing that paralyzes almost every human being on earth: failure. The third rule is that you must completely redefine what it means to fall short and learn the mechanics of failing forward. I want you to think about how you approach a video game like Super Mario Brothers. In that game, your ultimate overriding goal is to rescue the princess from the castle, but the path is littered with deadly obstacles, bottomless pits to fall into, bad guys to avoid, traps waiting to end your run. When you pick up the controller for the very first time, misjudge a jump and fall straight into a pit, you do not throw the controller at the wall, hang your head in deep shame, and declare that you're a total failure who should never play video games again. Instead, your brain immediately registers the data from the mistake. You say to yourself, oh, I see there's a pit right there. I need to come in a little faster and jump a fraction of a second earlier next time. You focus entirely on the ultimate goal of winning the level. And every single time you die in the game, you do not internalize it as a flaw in your character. You simply learn one more way not to do it. This is called the Super Mario effect, and it is the exact psychological framework you must apply to your actual life. We vastly overestimate the negative lasting impact of failing and completely underestimate our own innate ability to handle it. When you try to build a business, when you put your raw art on the internet, when you pitch an idea at work and it gets completely shot down, it is going to sting. It hurts when you fail, just like the sad music plays when you lose a life in a game. But you cannot allow that temporary defeat to define your identity. Failure is not permanent. It is not pervasive, and it is most certainly not personal. The belief that a setback ruins your whole life or proves that you are permanently flawed is a toxic lie that leads directly to learned helplessness. Failure is simply data. It is the feedback mechanism of the universe. It is undeniable proof that you are actually in the arena testing the physical and mental limits of what is possible. Rather than sitting safely on the sidelines, living a life of quiet, miserable desperation, Thomas Edison conducted over 1,000 failed experiments before he finally perfected the light bulb. When people asked him about it, he didn't see 1,000 failures. He saw 1,000 steps closer to the reality he was trying to build. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times, the absolute most in the history of baseball, but nobody remembers the agonizing strikeouts. They only remember the majestic home runs. If you're not failing regularly, you're not even trying. You're playing it so safely, so conservatively that you have absolutely no idea how vast, incredible, and deeply rewarding your life could actually be. In fact, you should actively make it your goal to fail. If you were terrified of speaking up at work or trying a new hobby or looking foolish in front of strangers, set a deliberate goal to go out and fail at it 10 times. Go for 0 views on a video, go for the rejection in a sales call, go for the absolute loss, because making failure the actual goal takes the suffocating pressure off your fragile ego and turns the entire daunting process into an experiment. Every failure you endure is just emotional exposure therapy that builds your tolerance for risk and burns away your fear of judgment. If you build a cozy safety net to fall back on, you will inevitably fall back. But if you remove the net, if you decide that when you fall, you're going to fall forward, at least you will see exactly what you're going to hit. When you finally embrace the bitter struggle, you realize that the pain, the profound frustration, and the bone-deep exhaustion are not there to stop you. They are there to weed out the people who do not want it badly enough. The struggle separates the dreamers from the doers, the wishful thinkers from the relentless warriors. And as you push forward, you must learn to forgive yourself for your past mistakes, because holding on to them is exactly like carrying a heavy bag of stones everywhere you go. It slows you down, completely drains your energy, and keeps you hopelessly trapped in a cycle of guilt and regret. You have to understand that your past decisions were made with the limited knowledge, maturity, and awareness you had at that specific time. Today, you're wiser exclusively because of those painful experiences. So instead of hating your past self, thank them for the brutal lessons they endured to get you here. Drop the bag of stones and walk into your future with a lighter step. Like a tree falling in the forest under the steady, consistent strikes of an axe, just 5 purposeful swings a day, it doesn't fall from one massive heroic blow, but from the relentless, patient consistency of showing up to strike again and again and again. But knowing how to fail forward and strike the tree is entirely meaningless if you're still playing the game for the wrong audience. You can build all the unbreakable discipline in the world. You can clear your calendar of every distraction, and you can bravely face rejection day after brutal day. But if you're doing it all just to win the cheap applause of people who do not truly care about you, you are meticulously building a spectacular prison for your own soul. You see, the most dangerous trap in this life isn't failure at all. The most dangerous trap is succeeding brilliantly at a game you were never supposed to be playing in the first place. There's a silent, hidden scorecard tracking every single move you make. And if you're looking at the wrong one, you're going to lose everything that actually matters. That hidden scorecard I mentioned, the one that silently dictates whether you die fulfilled or completely hollowed out, is the 4th rule you must permanently brand into your consciousness. You must violently tear up the outer scorecard and learn to play exclusively by the inner one. When Warren Buffett was just a young man, his father sat him down and handed him the ultimate psychological weapon, explaining that every single human being must choose between 2 ways to measure their existence. You can live by the outer scorecard, which is a fragile, terrifying place where your entire sense of self-worth is dictated by the applause of strangers, the brand of clothes on your back, and the image you project to the world. The more you can live by the inner scorecard, where the only thing that matters is your own standard, your own integrity, and the quiet truth of who you are when absolutely nobody is looking, Buffett asks a brutal, revealing question to test which card you're holding. Would you rather be the absolute greatest lover in the world, but have every single person on earth think you're the worst? Or would you rather be the worst lover in the world, but have everyone publicly celebrate you as the greatest? If you choose the second option, you're living a lie, performing as a tragic actor who is hopelessly enslaved to an audience that does not even truly care about you. We live in a society that is deeply, sickeningly obsessed with this outer scorecard where people gladly drown themselves in crushing debt to buy cars they cannot afford just to impress neighbors they do not even like. You nod along to conversations you hate. You agree to 100 tiny favors that drain your life force, and you quietly squeeze your own massive dreams completely out of your schedule just to avoid disappointing someone else. But let me tell you a harsh, liberating truth. The people you are trying so desperately to please are completely consumed by their own chaotic lives, likely binge-watching a screen right now and barely thinking about your existence at all. When you finally stop giving a damn about their judgments, which are just projections of their own deep insecurities and fears anyway, you become incredibly, terrifyingly free. You become dangerous. You can walk into a room wearing a cheap suit and carry more raw, undeniable power than a man in $10,000 worth of fabric simply because you know exactly who you are. But once you strip away the applause, once you stop performing for the crowd and stand alone in the deafening silence of your own expectations, the real war begins. This is where the empathy ends and the brutal, unforgiving grind takes over. Because knowing what to do is absolutely worthless if you do not have the iron spine to execute it. Your mind is going to beg you to stay comfortable. Your brain is a master negotiator, constantly searching for a soft place to land, whispering that you can just start tomorrow, that one more day of rest won't hurt, that you aren't ready yet, but there is no perfect time. And waiting for the stars to align is nothing more than a coward's excuse to avoid the pain of action. If you wait until you feel ready, you will wait until you're in your grave. You have to stop treating your own comfort like a cozy blanket and recognize it for what it truly is, a slow-moving, bloodthirsty zombie that is quietly eating away at your finite hours while you casually scroll through the highlight reels of people who are actually in the arena. Look at David Goggins, a man who stared down his own pathetic reality when he was nearly 300 pounds, making $1,000 a month spraying for cockroaches, and realized with pure terror that this miserable existence could be the absolute ceiling of his potential. He didn't wait for a surge of divine motivation. He marched straight into hell, duct taping his broken, fractured feet in the middle of the night during Navy SEAL training, and simply decided that being broken and suffering was his new non-negotiable normal. You must become the ruthless CEO of your own suffering. You have to accept that the struggle is not a sign to turn back. The struggle is the very fire that burns away your weakness and forges the resilience you desperately need. When the alarm violently rips you out of sleep at 4 a.m. and the floor is freezing and every cell in your body screaming at you to pull the covers back over your head, you do not pause to ask yourself if you feel like getting up. The exact moment you ask your brain for its opinion, you have already lost. You must adopt the 5-minute rule, act immediately, violently before your mind has the chance to generate a 100 brilliant, perfectly logical reasons why you should quit. This brings us to the fifth and most critical rule of your new existence, the law of relentless micro-execution. The greatest lie ever sold to you by modern society is the myth of the overnight success, the sudden breakthrough. The massive cinematic leap that changes everything in a single afternoon. Real success doesn't look like a movie montage. It is excruciatingly boring. It is the unsexy, repetitive, quiet work done in the shadows when absolutely nobody is cheering for you. It is Jerry Seinfeld sitting down with a piece of paper every single day, regardless of his mood, writing one single joke and putting a massive red X on his calendar, entirely focused on one simple, unbreakable rule. Do not break the chain. It is Jeff Bezos packing books on his hands and knees in a cold garage, fighting for one tiny sale after another. It is Simone Biles repeating the exact same grueling, bone-rattling gymnastics drill thousands upon thousands of times in an empty gym long before the Olympic lights ever hit her face. You're waiting for a tidal wave to change your life, but you're completely ignoring the tiny, consistent drops of water that can eventually cut through solid stone. You have to commit to doing just one hard thing every single day. It doesn't have to be moving a mountain. It might be dropping to the floor and doing 10 push-ups when your bed looks like heaven, or reading 10 pages of a book instead of watching a screen, or looking someone in the eye and having the difficult conversation you have been avoiding for 6 months. Every single time you make that choice, every time you choose the hard path over the easy one, you're doing a micro rep for your character. You're slowly stacking undeniable proof that you are someone who keeps their word, and that quiet, consistent effort is what builds true, unshakable confidence. But you cannot execute blindly. A man running incredibly fast in the wrong direction is still a fool. You must engineer your environment and protect your focus, like your actual life depends on it, because it does. You have to plan your tomorrow tonight before you even close your eyes. If you go to sleep without a battle plan, your brain stews in confusion, and you wake up reacting to the chaos of the world instead of commanding it. Write down the 3 absolute non-negotiable targets for the next day. And when you wake up, do not dare reach for that glowing piece of glass by your bed to flood your mind with the fake curated lives of strangers, notifications, and toxic news. Give yourself 10 sacred minutes of pure silence to sharpen your mind before the world starts screaming at you. Use the 2-minute rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, execute it immediately, destroying the seeds of procrastination before they can even take root in your schedule. Stop trying to multitask, which is just a fancy word for doing many things terribly at the exact same time. You have a finite amount of energy, and if you chase 10 different rabbits, you will stumble home starving in the dark. You must harness your attention, lock onto a single target, and refuse to let go until the work is finished. Warren Buffett notes that compounding is the most powerful force in the universe, but the psychology of it is brutal because it requires you to survive the flat part of the curve. You will put in the grueling hours, you will sweat, you will bleed, you will sacrifice your weekend, and you will look in the mirror after a month and see absolutely zero physical evidence that anything has changed. That is the exact moment when the week break. That is where the dreamers quit and go back to the couch whining that the system is rigged. But you have to stay on the hill. You have to keep pushing that snowball, trusting that beneath the surface, the roots are growing deep into the dark soil, preparing for a harvest you cannot yet see. You're going to strip away the toxic people who mock your ambition, distancing yourself from the heavy anchors who want you to stay small just so they can feel comfortable in their own mediocrity. You're going to manage your time as if every minute is bleeding directly from your veins, because time is the one currency you can never, ever earn back. You're going to put blinders on, ruthlessly eliminating the superficial distractions, the cheap dopamine, and the meaningless drama that keeps the masses hopelessly sedated. You will become a machine of execution, moving with a terrifying speed and precision, acting immediately when an opportunity presents itself, rather than drowning in the paralysis of overthinking. Day by day, hour by hour, you will feel the weakness burning out of your system. You will feel your posture change. You will look at the chaotic, noisy world around you and feel a deep, stoic calmness because you finally control your own mind instead of letting it control you. You will have built the unshakable foundation. You will have mastered the art of failing forward, the brutal discipline of subtraction, and the quiet, violent power of daily execution. But as you stand there, hardened and ready, staring out at the horizon of your new life with absolute clarity, you will realize that the physical work was only the beginning. There's a silent, unseen enemy waiting for you just past the threshold of your discipline. An enemy that has destroyed empires, bankrupted brilliant minds, and ruined men who thought they were entirely bulletproof. That silent, unseen enemy waiting just past the threshold of your newly forged discipline is the terrifying, seductive whisper of arrival. It is the quiet, comforting illusion that because you have worked hard for a few months, because you have finally built a routine and tasted a tiny drop of success, you have somehow crossed the finish line and earned the right to rest. But let me tell you a truth that will save your life. There is absolutely no finish line in the relentless pursuit of self-improvement. The exact moment a human being ceases to learn, ceases to push, and ceases to hunger for the next horizon is the exact moment they begin to slowly, quietly decline. Stagnation is the slow, agonizing death of your vast potential, and complacency is the absolute enemy of all meaningful progress. Comfort is a dangerous sedative that lulls the weak back into the suffocating arms of mediocrity. But the truly strong remain forever restless, constantly reaching for greater heights that they cannot yet even see. You must look at the boundless future stretching out in front of you and realize that the pursuit of excellence is a lifelong endeavor. And the wise understand that conquering one massive peak merely reveals another, even higher mountain waiting patiently in the distance. You're not building a temporary shelter. You are constructing an unbreakable citadel of the mind, and you must stay hungry, letting absolutely no day pass without stretching your abilities and expanding your vision of what is fundamentally possible. Imagine the sheer staggering magnitude of the life you are actively designing right now as you step into this new era of yourself. We are conditioned to think of compounding purely as a financial term, but it is actually the most powerful fundamental law of the universe. Applying to your biology, your relationships, your knowledge, and your very soul. When you commit to this unbroken path of growth, you're pushing a tiny snowball down an incredibly long hill. At first, as you pack the wet snow together in the freezing cold, it feels small, heavy, and deeply insignificant. You will put in the grueling, unsexy work reading when no one is watching, sacrificing your temporary pleasure, grinding in the shadows, and you will look in the mirror and see absolutely no immediate difference. That flat, agonizing part of the curve is where the boys are separated from the men, where the dreamers are permanently separated from the doers. But if you can just survive that boredom, if you can refuse to interrupt the sacred process of compounding, your efforts will eventually hit a terrifying tipping point. The knowledge you gain today builds flawlessly on the wisdom you earned yesterday, creating an explosive or exponential trajectory of growth that will make your future self completely unrecognizable to the person you are right now. You are capable of far, far more than you have ever allowed yourself to believe. And the terrifying limits you thought were holding you down were never actually real. They were merely fragile illusions born out of your own hesitation. As you walk forward into this brilliant, blinding future, you must fundamentally change your relationship with destiny. You must embrace the Stoic philosophy of a Marathi, not just accepting the things that happen to you, but passionately embracing them, loving them, and turning them into raw fuel for your ascent. When you look at the obstacles on your path, you must realize they did not happen to you, they happened for you. A blazing fire turns everything that is thrown into it into brilliant light and intense heat. And that is exactly what your mind must become when you are deeply anchored in this mineral soil of your own soul, a place so incredibly deep and raw that nothing can ever burn it away. You tap into a limitless reservoir of power. You learn to control the sympathetic nervous system, turning the fight or flight response into a focused, calculated surge of invincibility. You are no longer reacting to the chaotic noise of the world. You are dictating the absolute terms of your existence. You realize that you do not find peace by avoiding the storm. You find an unbreakable, profound peace on the exact opposite side of suffering, trials, and relentless accountability. Every time you push through the resistance, every single time you step boldly into the unknown, despite the fear screaming in your head, you are sending a violent, undeniable signal to your brain that you are no longer a passenger in your own body. You are the captain, and you are steering this ship toward greatness. The future you're walking into is so vast and so deeply beautifully that you must stop holding on to the heavy, suffocating baggage of your past. You must forgive yourself right now for the mistakes you made when you were younger. Because holding on to that guilt is exactly like dragging a heavy bag of stones everywhere you go. It violently drains your energy and keeps you hopelessly trapped in a cycle of regret. You must understand that your past decisions were made with the limited awareness and maturity you possessed at that specific time, and the only reason you're wiser today is because of the brutal lessons those mistakes provided. So drop the stones, thank your past self for enduring the pain required to get you to this exact moment, and turn your eyes completely to the horizon to get something you have never had. You must be willing to do something you have never done. You must be willing to fall forward into the great unknown, trusting that the brutal discipline you have forged will act as your parachute. You will face massive challenges, you will stumble, and you will occasionally lose your footing. But every single failed experiment is simply one mathematical step closer to your ultimate success. You are no longer playing small because there is absolutely no passion to be found in settling for a life that is a fraction of what you're actually capable of living. Look at the world around you crying out in desperate need of the exact gifts you have been hiding in the dark. There is profound pain, deep confusion, and a desperate hunger for leadership. And the world absolutely needs what you have inside of you. What are you going to do with what you have been given? Whether your gift is a brilliant mind, a compassionate heart, a relentless work ethic, or the quiet gift of long suffering, you have a moral obligation to cultivate it and pour it out into the lives of others. The ultimate fruit of this life is not the money you hoard in a bank account. And it is certainly not the fleeting, hollow applause of strangers. The true fruit of human existence is the iron strength of your character and the selfless acts you perform for the common good. When you operate at your absolute highest frequency, you are not just elevating yourself, you're pulling everyone around you up into the light. You begin to plant beautiful, strong trees whose shade you fully know you will never actually sit under. That is the magnificent definition of playing the long game, building a legacy so profound, so deeply rooted in truth and discipline that it outlasts your physical body and echoes in eternity. This is the exact moment your entire destiny shifts. You can no longer afford the luxury of waiting for the perfect time, because the perfect time is a devastating lie invented by cowards. If you wait until you feel fully ready, you will wait until you are lowered into your grave. The greatest figures in human history did not wait for the stars to perfectly align. They took a massive, terrifying leap before they were ready. They learned brutally along the way, and they pressed forward with a relentless, burning determination that shattered the boundaries of the impossible. You must become a machine of pure execution. Because dreams are completely free, but your goals demand a heavy daily payment in the raw currency of discipline and courage. Action is the ultimate cure. Action kills the fear that has paralyzed you. Action builds the unshakable confidence you have been searching for. And action creates a massive rolling momentum that no force on earth can possibly stop. You are standing at the absolute edge of your old life, looking out over a magnificent, terrifying ocean of potential. Do not blink, do not turn back. Do not negotiate with the weakness that kept you small. Step forward into the fire, burn away the last remaining traces of your doubt, and execute with such overwhelming, violent passion that the universe has no choice but to bend to your will. When that universe finally bends to your will, something incredibly profound and entirely unexpected happens in the silence of your own mind. The deafening roar of your doubts simply vanishes, replaced by a deep, unshakable quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when you have completely conquered yourself. You will wake up one morning long after the initial thrill of starting has faded, and you will realize that you are no longer forcing yourself to be disciplined. You're no longer negotiating with your alarm clock or desperately hunting for a fleeting spark of motivation. You have simply become the machine. You have become the storm. All those tiny, seemingly insignificant micro habits you stack day after exhausted day have quietly compounded in the dark, weaving together to forge an entirely new human being. You will look in the mirror and lock eyes with someone who operates on an entirely different frequency, someone who moves with the terrifying, beautiful grace of absolute certainty. This is the victory. This is the exact moment you cross the invisible threshold from hoping you can change your life to knowing deep in your bones that you already have. And as you stand on this new summit, breathing the rare thin air of your own realized potential, you will look out at the vast horizon and finally understand the ultimate secret of the long game. You see, the greatest minds to ever walk this earth understood that the most powerful force in the universe is not raw talent, and it is certainly not luck. It is the miraculous silent power of compounding over time. When you commit to this new standard of excellence, you are no longer living for the cheap temporary dopamine hits of immediate gratification. You are rolling a snowball down an infinitely long hill. And while it started small and heavy in your freezing hands, it has now gathered a massive, unstoppable momentum. Time is no longer your enemy. Time has become your absolute greatest ally. You are no longer chasing the fleeting applause of the crowd because you have realized that true wealth, the kind of wealth that fills your soul and lets you sleep in profound peace, is built in the shadows over decades of unwavering consistency. You will begin to operate with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that they are constructing a monument that will easily outlast their own physical body. You are no longer playing a finite game with a ticking clock. You are playing the infinite game of legacy. This is where your ambition must evolve from something selfish into something breathtakingly selfless. Because once you have secured your own foundation, once you have built the unshakable citadel of your character and mastered the raw mechanics of success, the entire purpose of your life shifts. You realize that the true fruit of human existence is not the money you have hoarded in a bank account, and it is not the titles printed beneath your name. It is good character and the selfless acts you perform for the common good. The greatest, most fulfilling victory you will ever experience is realizing that the empire you have built can now become a sanctuary for those who are still struggling in the dark. There's an ancient, beautiful proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. As you step into this brilliant future, you're going to spend your days meticulously planting magnificent trees, fully knowing that you will never personally sit in their shade. You will build businesses, create art, and forge pathways that will shelter your children, your community, and perfect strangers long after you're gone. That is what it means to truly win. That is what it means to transcend the ordinary and step into the realm of the immortal. Imagine the sheer staggering freedom of living a life where your only metric for success is the amount of love and value you pour out into the world. You will discover that the deepest voids in your soul cannot be filled by buying more things or desperately seeking the world's validation, but by the quiet, noble act of taking care of someone else. The love you give away is the only love you truly get to keep. And the more you pour out your gifts, your time, your wisdom, your fierce protection, the more an overwhelming abundance flows right back into your life. You will walk into rooms and instantly elevate the frequency of everyone around you. Your mere presence will become a silent permission slip for others to drop their excuses, abandon their fears, and violently chase their own greatness, because people do not listen to what you say, they watch exactly what you do. When they see the fire in your eyes, when they witness the uncompromising integrity of your actions, they will be helplessly drawn to the light you carry. You will become a mentor, a beacon, a living, breathing testament to the staggering beauty of what happens when a human being completely refuses to give up. To guarantee this future, to ensure that this magnificent vision becomes your undeniable reality, you must immediately begin to live your life backward. I want you to fast forward to the very end of the tape. Imagine the day of your funeral. Looking down at the crowd of people who have gathered to say goodbye to you, what do you want them to whisper to each other in the quiet moments? Do you want them to talk about the car you drove, the expensive clothes you wore, or the superficial arguments you won? No. You want them to say that you were the kindest, strongest, most generous force they ever had the privilege of knowing. You want them to say that you lived with absolute unapologetic passion, that you loved without condition, and that you made every single person you touched infinitely better just by being there. You must write that obituary right now. Not the one printed in the cold ink of a newspaper, but the one permanently engraved into the beating hearts of the people you love. Write it today and then spend every waking second of your remaining life executing the actions required to make those words the absolute truth. When you reverse engineer your destiny like this, the trivial distractions of the modern world instantly lose their toxic grip on you. You no longer have the bandwidth to care about the opinions of small minds because you're far too busy living a legacy that will echo in eternity. Every single morning you open your eyes, you're holding a fresh brush in your hand. And the day stretching out before you is a completely blank canvas. You are the master artist of your own existence, and the choices you make in the quiet, unseen moments are the bold strokes of paint that will define your masterpiece. You're stepping into an era where time is moving faster than ever before, and the world will not wait for you to feel ready. The future is arriving with terrifying speed, but you are no longer afraid of it. You are sprinting eagerly toward it, armed with a sharpened mind and a heart that completely refuses to break. You have learned the brutal lessons. You have burned away the dead weight of your past, and you have forged an iron discipline that makes your success a mathematical certainty. You're standing at the absolute peak of your potential, looking out over a life that is so incredibly vibrant, so deeply meaningful, and so profoundly yours that it brings tears to your eyes. Just thinking about it, you have the power, you have the knowledge You have the unstoppable raging fire inside of you that the world desperately needs. Do not let another second slip through your fingers while you wait for a sign. You are the sign. Do not insult the universe by playing small when you were entirely engineered for greatness. The blank canvas is waiting. The brush is heavy in your hand. And the rest of your beautiful unwritten life begins this exact second. Hate